Hi. Yay, we are live now. So, welcome to Rebooting Your Life. And today I am with the lovely Erin Chamberlain.
Hello, Emma. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Erin, please would you just introduce a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Erin. I am a book geek, basically, who loves to help people plan and write and publish books that help people and transform their lives. And one of the ways that I really help people do that is I hold space for people 3 times a week in accountability groups so that they can show up and they can write, and you don't have to scrabble around in your life thinking, oh, I want to write this book, but I've got no idea where I'm going to find the time. So I make the space for people to commit to themselves to get their work done.
Fabulous. Brilliant. So today, Rebooting Your Life is all about rebooting your life after redundancy, because Erin's got a story to share around that. So, Erin, please would you tell me your story?
Sure. So I've always known that books are what I wanted to do for a job. When I was a kid, one of the things I loved doing, we'd come down from, I'm from Australia, we'd come down from country New South Wales to my grandparents, and every holidays, mum and dad, and would take us into Sydney, because my dad had this, my dad loved to get his hair cut at this particular barber's. So we would go to this barber, and it was right next door to this gigantic bookstore called Dymocks. And we would go into Dymocks, and my sister and I would get, $10 or whatever, and we'd buy books. So I've loved books ever since I can remember. And I used to write stories and plays with my friends when we moved back to Sydney when I was like 8 or 9. Then when I started high school, I joined up to this mentoring scheme, and I had to come up with a project. So my project was how a book is made. And then I went to work experience, was really single-minded about that. And I landed a week of work experience at HarperCollins Publishers when I was in year 10, which that's like landing a magazine, everyone wants to go and, work at Heat or something for their Heat magazine for their work experience. And then, so then I ended up working at one of these Dymocks bookstores. They were franchises all the way through the end of high school and university. And then I landed my first job at a publishing house. It was called Global Book Publishing. So I always had big aspirations. And I was the editorial assistant. And basically, it was a dream run. I was straight from my exams into my first job. In Australia, you finish your exams in November because our summer holidays are over Christmas. And then I was straight into my new job in January. So, So I was working for Global Book Publishing for 4 years. And then it got to this point, and I did crazy things. Like, one night I was waiting at a bus stop, and my boss rang me and she said, "We've got a bit of a problem. Don't suppose you could get on a plane to Hong Kong tomorrow?" And she's like, "Yeah, the CD-ROM isn't working, and we don't think there's anything wrong with it. We just need somebody to go to Hong Kong and tell the people to press the CD." So I ended up flying out the next day to Hong Kong, put up for 3 or 4 nights in a hotel, visited the printer, all sorts of crazy stuff. But then it got to this point. Publishing, the thing with publishing is you are running budgets in a publishing house. So you hire editorial staff, you hire design staff, people come in-house. But as everyone knows, there's lots of people that work freelance in publishing. So what happens is, if you start with freelancers, you you keep on paying them and paying them to get the projects done, and then you get to a certain point, and then you look at your figures, and it's like, oh, that's like a whole salary. Maybe we should get that editor and get them to come in-house and be a desk editor.
Yeah.
So there's swings and roundabouts, because then once you've got all your team in-house, you know, you look at your overheads and it's like, oh, we've got big in-house overheads.
Yeah.
We need to cut people. So we need to cut a salary here. But of course, you know, you've still got to make the same amount of books. So it just goes around and around the in-house freelance kind of thing. So when I turned, when I was about, yeah. So when I was about 26, my boss sat me down and she said, I think we need to make someone redundant. You're the one I'm thinking of, because, well, I just don't, she said, I think you're ready for your next step. And if you stay here, I think I'm holding you back. And, you know, I can't offer you much more progression, because it was a small company, you know, 10 or 12 people. So she said, I'm not going to make you redundant if you don't want to be made redundant, but I strongly suggest that you take voluntary redundancy. So I was 26, and my sister was getting married. She was 24, getting married in 3 months' time. And most of my friends were married and starting to think about children, which felt really young for me. And I just thought, and then 13,000 Australian dollars dropped into my bank account. I've never been good at saving. And I thought, well, this is my time to go and travel. You know, we can easily get working holiday visas out of Australia. I booked a return ticket because I had to come back for my sister's wedding. And I thought, go give it a go, see what I can do in 3 or 4 months. If it's not working out in 3 or 4 months, then I've had a nice 3 or 4 month trip around the UK and Europe. And and I just did it. I took the voluntary redundancy. I came over to England. I stayed on the floor of my friend's bedroom in Tooting Bec for about 9 days until she got really cross. And then I found a place to stay that was like lodging in somebody's house for about 10 days. In fact, she found that for me because she was that cross about sharing her space. And then I found a place in Streatham Hill to live. It's a very small bedroom, but it was only 320 quid a month. So, you know, like bargain for London. And I showed up for my interview there. It was raining for, you know, the housemate interview thing. My jeans were soaked up beyond my knee. And it's still the abiding memory of Alison and Anya, these friends that I lived with, that I just showed up sort of, you know, absolutely a drowned rat to this interview. So, you know, I found a place to stay. I'd had a little meeting with somebody that I that said, you know, come and see me in London. I'm always looking to take on new people. So I'd met her at a, you know, Harbourside hotel in Sydney, and she said, and then when I came in, she said, come and see us. So I came in and I saw her. I got interviewed by Jane Morrow, who was my boss for a bit. She's now like massive. She's go check out Jane Morrow on Instagram. She's the publisher of Murdoch Books over back in Australia now. And she does massive books now. So I started working for Sylvia, and that was a rocky kind of job, but because I was on a I was on a working holiday visa at that point. I kind of, you know, there was a bit of an end point. You know, you come for 2 years, you see what you're going to do, you make a bit of money. I'm a bit of a hard worker, so you know, they like to hire people. They call them waifs and strays. So people that don't have family that can stay till 8 at 9 at night and you know, run the deadlines. especially, you know, when you're making books that are going to America and all over the world. And, you know, America's time zone comes next, doesn't it? So, you know, if you're in the office from 7 till 9, you can sort those clients out. Yeah. So, you know, I got made redundant, and all of a sudden I was over here with a job, with a place to live, you know, living the dream expat life, I guess, going on little holidays. Where did I go? Well, everywhere really. You know those, you know, back in the day when we were allowed to fly places, and you get the last plane into Stansted, and then you'd have to run for the last train, and you were getting back into London at 2 a.m. on Monday morning, and you had to front up to work the next day by 9:30. You know, those are the days when you're in your late 20s, early 30s.
So you would go over and do like weekends away and things like that, would you? And
yeah. So, you know, all the money was being saved to, where did I go? You know, places in Italy, places in France.
Yeah.
Every so often I'd head back to Australia for, you know, every other Christmas or my sister's birthday or something. But, you know, it's relatively cheap just to fly one person when you can just stay at your folks' house back in Australia. So, you know, 1,500 quid if you time it right.
How did you feel at that time when you were made redundant?
Well, it was a funny feeling, really, I guess, because, you know, you're not in control of things anymore. You don't exactly know how things are going to turn out. You know, and I was a pretty driven person, so I had this career track in mind, and I knew that you know, publishing in Australia is a pretty small pond. So you know, getting over to the UK, which means that you can easily go to some of these big book fairs. As you know, the London Book Fair is pretty big. There's one in October usually called the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is the biggest book fair in the world. And when you can start putting things like that on your CV, it sort of makes you stand out a bit. So I guess in my head, I was like, okay, well, this is an opportunity to go and travel, have some fun, you know, see what I can do on my own 2 feet, because, you know, no longer able to be backed up by mum and dad really, because, you know, pounds versus Australian dollars, they can't really, you know, cost them a lot of money to pay me out of a hole. And yeah, it was, I think once I got my head around it, I think I had a few wobbly days, but once I got my head around it, it was pretty exciting, you know, packing up my 32 kilos into my suitcase and heading off for a new life, when all of my friends are starting to, you know, my friends back home, my kids are 9, my oldest is 9, and my friends back home, their oldest is, you know, 15, 16. So I felt like my life was shrinking a bit back there as well. That, you know, all of the good blokes were being snapped up and all of that.
So did you meet an Englishman then?
I did. Yeah. So I met him so I kept on working for Sylvia I worked for a company called Elwyn Street Productions, and I worked there for 4 years, which was a bit of a record, because I reckon there are about 6 or 7 people who worked for this company, but over those 4 years I probably had 40 colleagues. My boss was volatile and made hires for 3 months or so. So again, one of my colleagues there, did you ever see those a couple years back there were these books that came out, you know, the 5 Go Mad in Dorset and stuff like that, famous 5 knockoffs, sort of humorous books?
I think
So one of my colleagues, on his very first day, he made his own desk, because, you know, that's how my boss rolled. He's like, here, have a IKEA flat pack. That can be your first day. And he's gone on, and he's now something big in Macmillan, and they were his baby, they were his books. The stocking fillery Christmassy things. Quite funny. If you're into
ideas from your workplace then.
Possibly. So so I guess, so then I had to, because I was only on a 2-year working visa, I had to go back to Australia. My boss wanted me so much that she found me a desk at an Australian publishing house to work from.
Wow, yeah.
So I kept on working for her while I was waiting for my work permit to come through. Then went back to England, back to the small room that I was living in. And then I was there till 2008, and I got engaged earlier to an English guy earlier that year. And the whole kind of work really hard because I want you to thing was getting a little bit tired. And wasn't really good for my health either. When you come home and dinner's a packet of crisps and a couple glasses of wine, it's has a bit of an impact on your health even when you're in your 20s. So we'd made the decision, Dave and I'd made the decision that I was going to leave and find something else. And we'd made it that I was going to leave early. So before we got married, I was just going to leave and then see what happens, even though my work permit was tied to that job. But then it just got a bit icky there. So there was one moment where she made a decision that was just against my values and was really, really mean to me. And we had a bit of a fight, a bit of an altercation, I guess, on the Friday night. And I was expecting her to call me and to apologize, and she didn't. And then we went in on Monday, and she just expected me just to get on with the job, and I wanted to have a conversation, and the conversation ended up with me handing my keys in and just walking out. So, and then she didn't pay me for the last month that I worked and sent me a lawyer's letter. She was that kind of person. And she's known in the industry now as well. So, if ever a job catches my eye, the first question is, so is that this company? And they're going, yeah, it is. I was like, oh, I don't think I'm a good fit for that job then, I think. She would remember. So
would you want to work for it?
No. I mean, things have moved on and changed slightly, but I don't imagine she's changed as a person very much.
I always say that you can dredge through lots of crap, whatever job you do, as long as your values are the same. It doesn't matter. You can be given the crappy end of the stick. You can be given something broken to fix, but that works, and it doesn't matter because you've all got the same vision or mission that you're working towards. You've all got you've got similar values, and that's why you're doing it. But I think when those values are crossed, and
you don't want to have a conversation, to at least come to a compromise. So from there, I did a bit of jiggery pokery with my visa situation. So it should have gone work permit, marriage visa, indefinite leave to remain. What it went was work permit, volunteer workers visa. So I'd met Dave at the church that we go to, and I volunteered quite a bit at that church, teaching kids the Sunday lessons and doing Thursday night clubs and things like that. And I ended up going on to staff at the church as a volunteer on this volunteer workers visa. But then there was just, I mean, it's all my fault, really. Dave and I got married, and visas are tricky things, and they're really expensive. So Dave and I got married. I think I went onto the visa website and downloaded the form in March to start filling in for May. That you're not allowed to send your paperwork in until 4 weeks before. And I did my paperwork and I sent it in, and it turned out that since I downloaded my form and I sent my paperwork in, there'd been a new form, like a new form had come out in April. So that means that they just take your money and they hold on to your important paperwork, like your marriage certificate and your passport and stuff like that. And they return it to you when you're about 3 days overdue of your visa. So we just gave it a go and reapplied. But, then the first block is, oh, well, this visa's out of date. They can't have a new visa, can they? So I got rejected for all my visas. They held on to my passport and my marriage certificate. And they don't give you very good instructions about what you should do to fix the situation either. They take all your money. So, we're $2 or $3 grand down. They take all your money just by looking at the first tick box. And I think Dave had important exam. He's a financial advisor. He had an important exam for his chartered status that day. And I was just like, the visa's been rejected. So he just came home from his exam. He didn't sit it then. So we lost some money there too. And then in the end, we just decided it was best and that there were no avenues available but for me to go back to Australia and to apply from there. And then come back in, and they said, well, that will take 90 days.
Without a passport.
So I had to tell them what was happening. I had to arrange an exit interview at one of the border agency offices out in Croydon. So I went to Electric House, where all the refugees are. Went into a secure, locked back room for this exit interview. Usually they escort you to Heathrow and then give you your documentation there so they can be sure that you get on the plane. But given that my flight was that night, the night of my exit interview, I don't know, back in the day, do you remember there were some mail strikes as well? Like back in 2008, 2009, Royal Mail went on strike. And so my passport was caught up all in that as well. So it's just like, well, I can't leave the country without my passport. So my passport came like 6 hours before my flight. I think they couldn't be bothered to arrange anybody to take my passport from Croydon to Heathrow. So I think they just judged me a low flight risk. Gave me my documentation back. So that was actually worse for me. Like, that felt worse than being made redundant, because it was like, that was very much all of my choices being taken away. So, I'd chosen to get married. That should have been enough, really, even with, it was still in the EU then. I suppose I could have fought for 2 years about Human Rights Act and all of the rest of it. But and Dave, my husband, he was like, oh, it's fine. We'll just, you made a mistake. Let's just suck it up and go through the 90 days and come back. And I was like, well, he was like, it's like, it'll come through. And I was like, how do you know? How do you know they're not going to reject it again? They've already rejected it twice. So, obviously I'm sitting there. Sorry, I had to pay for my flight back to Australia.
Did he go with you, or did you end up?
He had a job. Yeah. So I went back to Australia for 3 months. I think the very first day we travelled up to Canberra to the Australian embassy there, the British embassy there, to or the High Commission, whatever they call it, to lodge, this massive, thick paperwork thing. And then it's the border agency, isn't it? You know, they make you hang out your full 90 days. They're not going to make it easy.
No.
So that bit was the lowest point of sort of my life, you know, when you,
your mental health, really.
Yeah, I think so. Because it just, I quite like security, and I quite like making choices. And when those choices all get taken away, and
so that's probably a pinpoint, really, if there was that kind of a turning point for you, really, in terms of that.
I think so. And then we came back, and then I came back, and I guess it was sort of all back to normal. I think, and then we had our family. We've got 3 kids now, and then sort of along the way, I've been doing a bit of freelancing, sort of when, you know, publishers just sometimes randomly call you up and say, I found your CV in my desk drawer. I don't suppose you've got some time to do it. That's sort of how it's all gone down. Which is why then I decided that I needed to, you know, take control and be more responsible for my own business and making some money, and finding the leads and all of the rest of it. So that's how the business has been born, which it's nice to be in full control, but, you know, the mind monkeys sometimes, you know, come out to play a bit, and that's a journey as well, you know, trying to work out, you know, what to do. I had no idea how to do marketing, for example. So, you know, you can do something, but you've got to learn these skills along the way that you wouldn't, as a small business owner, you just have to know them all. You've got to work out how to do your own accounts, and you've got to work out how to tell people who you are and where you are and what you do. And
someone with you.
Sorry?
Why they
Exactly. So, you know, that's been a bit of a journey as well. And my 3rd daughter wasn't exactly planned. So she was a bit of a surprise. She's 4 at the end of the month, and she's starting school nursery full time on Monday. Although I've had her in a bit of sort of school hours nursery for the last year, but, you know, that was a bit of a, you know, lengthening detour on the journey as well.
I know, but number 3, it often is like you've got another piece to your cake, isn't it? And it's like the icing on top of your cake, number 3.
Oh, and I'm totally screwing her up the least out of the 3 of my kids. So. That's all good. She's the cutest one.
Is that because is number 3 the baby? Is that it? Or
it might be. She also just seems to be a bit sensible. We just keep on saying to our 9-year-old and our 7-year-old, why can't you just behave like Martha? She's only 4, but she's very sensible and she knows how to behave, and you too.
Oh, well, sometimes the tables turn, though, don't they?
They do. I did have to carry her back from the gym this morning half the way on my shoulders because she had a bit of a tantrum. So, you know, there it is.
So what would you say kind of what was the reboot to your life in terms of, because obviously you've had a, you know, couple of really challenging times kind of been, would you say that was like, was it like being, you had no option?
I guess they're kind of 3 stages really, aren't they? So so the redundancy reboot was probably the easiest one, but maybe because I didn't have masses of expectations and I had a bit of a get out as well. Like I wasn't hanging everything, you know, all my eggs weren't in one basket. It was just like, well, you know, if it doesn't work out, then I've had a fun 3 or 4 months trying it out, and then I'll go home and see what Australia holds for me. Then, you know, the work permit, the leaving the leaving that job that I had over here, you know, so in such a dramatic fashion, I guess.
Yeah.
That took a little bit of, that really knocked my confidence.
Yeah.
And it did take a good couple of freelance jobs to get my confidence back and not think, well, actually, I'm just not very good at this. You know, it took getting my confidence back by proving to myself that I could do things, to, I guess, be able to move myself to this point where I can stand on my own 2 feet in my own business. And you know, even though you get wobbles from time to time, you know, you can go back to how you've helped your old clients, or the wins that you can see stacking up along the way of how things have progressed from a year ago or whatever. So I guess if I hadn't had that difficult experience leaving that job, you know, I wouldn't get to see, you know, that you can lose your confidence and you can really build it back up. With
Does that tend to be where the mind monkeys come from around that around that time?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so, because, you know, when you've really poured yourself out and you've worked really hard for somebody, and then it sort of, you know, you've got solid evidence and proof that it wasn't good enough for them, or that you know, which isn't actually true. You know, your brain tells you that that's true, that it's evidence that it's not good enough, but really it's just that she wasn't a very nice person. And that that my actual leaving date was coming up, and maybe she changed her mind, and she didn't want me to leave easily. She wanted me to, you know, just do what I was told, or you know, there could have been all sorts of things going on in her head that, you know, ended up the way it ended up. So, you know, even though you very much tell yourself a story, and, you know, so I guess for me, it's that the not good enough wobbles always sort of happen, and I find it easy to find, you know, what looks like rock solid evidence, until you start really looking at it, and looking at it, well, what's the word, objectively, I guess. And other people looking at it and go, well, why are you thinking that? That's just a ridiculous thing to think. That's not what I get out of that situation.
I quite around create a data and evidence log. You know, as they're trying to build their confidence, is just always have that in the back of your mind, that that's kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to create a bank of positivity, so that those mind monkeys, poison parrots, or whatever they might be, whatever you might call them, that you can start coming back to them, you know, with evidence, and then you can start trying to talk to them in a controlled and objective way, really, so that you can start to make them your friend, so that they are a warning sign, really, rather than something that is something that causes you a block or slows you down, or, for example.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, redundancy for me was like a big door that opened into this, you know, amazing world that's become my life. So you know, I guess at the moment, lots of people maybe are facing redundancy out of their jobs, and it is uncertain. You know, we don't know. I'm just fingers crossed my kids stay in school for 4 weeks. It's all I need. I need 4 weeks until I have to track down COVID tests because they've got a cold or whatever. So, you know, it's uncertain. I've got no certainty that my kids are going to be in school between now and Christmas. It's uncertain how many jobs are going to be available. You know, it's uncertain whether you're going to go back into the office or stay at home. So many things that you can't count on at the moment, that really do mess around with how you might feel being made redundant, and people
aren't as meant, the opportunities perhaps aren't kind of as there as they were if you were made redundant. But I mean, I know what that feeling's like. I was in that situation. It was huge restructure. I was lucky to get a promotion, but actually I didn't want to stay because those values didn't match where mine were. So, and that was a big question. I tried for 6 months and I just, it was really difficult, but it was a massive thing. And after 19 years, was a huge decision to move away from it. But luckily I was still kind of within that sort of redundancy, try out your new job period when I left. So I did kind of have that little bit to fall back on, but it was really interesting that had been my purpose for so long, and then actually not having a purpose and everything under question was a huge, a real challenge for me, and tested me mentally massively. So, right then. So, thank you so much, Erin. Are there any tips that you could give on mental fitness and how you keep yourself mentally fit to anyone else?
So this is going to sound a bit crazy, but I discovered when I was about 38 that I really, really like lifting weights and that I'm quite good at it. So, and not just sort of, getting your hand weights out and, flinging them around, but proper barbell, Olympic weightlifting stuff. Proper snatch. That's what I was doing this morning. So I joined a CrossFit gym. I suck at PE. I always was the last person running in from the fun run or the long distance run. I'm not a cardio person at all, but give me a barbell and I like seeing myself improve and having a really positive way to compete against myself. So yeah, I'm not the person that pulls on their runners and goes out for a run for 5 miles or whatever, but there's just something about the barbell that is really good for my mental health. And community is really important to me as well. So so the gym that I go to is big on community. That's why it's not I don't go to a class like at the local leisure centre and I'm just in a class full of 30 people. I go to a class that everyone knows their name, and pokes you in the butt when you're doing something wrong and you're the last person finished and they clap you. So and as well as my church community, community is really important, and yeah, just keeping on top of my exercise and getting enough sleep, which is almost back to me now that my child is 4. In fact, my 9-year-old is the one that still gets up at 6 a.m. When does that start happening? Them, people sleeping till 11, 12.
Well, mine all are dozy now. So they really like the sleep. Even so, my eldest twin has always been the one. One of the boy twin has always got up really early, and actually quite along the way through lockdown was always up really early as well. So he was never difficult really to get up and get doing his schoolwork. Which people probably wouldn't believe me, because at primary he wasn't interested, whereas at secondary he is interested. So so he would get up and do that. But then in the last few weeks, as it got close to the summer holiday, probably about a week before the end of term, that all changed. And then for the last 6 weeks, so actually this morning he's been the most difficult one to get up. So but my youngest has always found it really hard to get to sleep. but then sleeps for England. But anyway, we managed to get him up for the last 2 mornings, and he's made it to school. So that's my achievement for this week.
Woo!
So, woo! Just need to get the other 2 up tomorrow. See if they make it. Yeah. And anyway, they both, well, yesterday's work was completed, and I've seen one doing work today. So I will be going and investigating that in a second. And see, because they, even though they're not back at school, school has started, so they're getting work each day, which they're not impressed by. And I've been told, well, why is it? I really don't want to go back to school when I've had 6 months off. So that's what I'm told today.
Mine were excited. I think they've missed people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you. Mine are. I'm lucky in that they're all quite sporty kids. So they've been probably for the last, I don't know, what is it, 6-8 weeks, something like that. They've been back at doing some form of training, each of them, and that's been really good for them. That it's interesting because when they come back from doing that, they wouldn't have necessarily been exhausted before, whereas now they come back from that and then they're really tired. Oh, I need to sleep now.
Yeah. I can see my 9-year-old's fitness levels have dropped off a cliff. And that's just walking to school, I reckon, because he's not been walking to school every day. Anyway,
well, we'll see what happens, won't we, and how trying and testing these next few months may be. But thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your story today, and
it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And if you want to know more about rebooting your life, or want to learn more about mental fitness, I have a mental fitness reboot 5-day, it's training challenge that it starts on the 14th of this month. The link should be in the post above. And if any of you would like to work with Erin, how do people get in touch with you?
Probably the best way is to come and find me on LinkedIn, I think. So I'm Erin Chamberlain on LinkedIn, or otherwise search on Facebook for Write Now, WRITE, and you'll find me and my business page there too.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much.